I felt the vibration before I heard it. The low rumble of heavy machinery rattled my kitchen window as I sipped my morning coffee. When I turned to look, I nearly dropped my mug. A yellow bulldozer crawled along the edge of my wooded 3-acre property, the land my family had owned for generations. Long before the Maple Ridge Estates HOA sprouted up next door with their cookie-cutter houses and strict rules about everything from mailbox colors to grass height. The bulldozer operator waved to someone just out of sight. Then Diane Thompson stepped into view, dressed in a sharp pantsuit that didn't belong on a muddy construction site. She clutched a clipboard like a weapon, her eyes scanning my land as if she already owned it. My daughter Jen, home for the weekend, joined me at the window. They can't just take your land, can they? I exhaled slowly, watching as workers hammered survey stakes into the soil, 50 feet inside my property line. No, I said, they can't. But they thought they could. The first HOA letter arrived 6 months ago, a friendly reminder about how my unkempt, natural woodland was an aesthetic burden on the neighborhood. I tossed in the recycling. The second letter included a $100 fine. The third came with a legal threat. Yesterday's letter was different. The Maple Ridge Homeowners Association is pleased to announce plans for a new community workshop on the undeveloped parcel adjacent to the eastern boundary. My parcel, my land. I pulled on my boots and walked toward the property line, where Diane stood directing workers. Morning. I called out, keeping my tone polite despite the anger boiling beneath my skin. Looks like you're confused about where your land ends. Diane turned, flashing a practiced smile. Mr. Mitchell, so glad you're here. We're just marking the expansion area. That's interesting, I said, because this is my land. She let out a short, dismissive laugh. Oh, there's been a misunderstanding. According to our revised community map, this wooded section was always meant to be common area. Your deed only covers your house lot. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo of my property survey, clearly marking my 3 acres. This land has been in my family for 60 years. I said evenly. Diane's smile didn't falter. Our attorneys have reviewed the situation, she said smoothly. The original developer intended this area for community use. We're simply correcting an oversight. She handed me a document. It referenced an HOA board meeting I hadn't been invited to, complete with signatures I didn't recognize. At the bottom was a crude map highlighting my land as Community Phase 2. I'm not part of your HOA, I said. Diane's smile finally wavered. Actually, she said, when the previous owner sold the adjacent lot to the developer, there was a provision that all connecting properties would be incorporated into the association. She was lying. I had never signed their covenant. My land had never been part of their dictatorship. I'll need to review that with my attorney, I said. Of course, Diane said sweetly, but construction begins next week. She walked away as workers pounded stakes deeper into my land. That night, I sat on my back porch, watching fireflies dance above the trees the HOA planned to cut down. My phone buzzed. It was Harold, my old friend at the county records office. Jack, he said, you were right. Something's off. Someone filed an amended plat map last month, showing your land as community property. Can you send me copies? Already did, he said. And Jack, they applied for construction permits using that fraudulent map. They're moving fast. I hung up and opened my laptop. I'd dealt with crooked developers before. I'd spent 40 years as a land surveyor, watching people steal land with a pen faster than any thief with a crowbar. I could fight them head-on, march into their meetings, demand justice, file immediate injunctions. That's what they expected. Instead, I smiled. I would let them believe they were winning. The next morning, workers began clearing a small path through my trees. I took photos but didn't stop them. Diane slowed her SUV as she drove past my house, watching to see if I would confront her. I waved pleasantly. That afternoon, I met with my attorney, Sandra Lee, and laid out my plan. They're overreaching badly, Sandra said, scanning the forged documents. This isn't just a boundary dispute. It's attempted property theft, possibly fraud. I want them to keep going, I said. Sandra looked up sharply. What? Every dollar they spend, every tree they cut, every foundation they pour, all increases what they'll owe when this is over. Sandra leaned back in her chair, considering. That's risky, she warned. They won't establish ownership, I said. I'll be documenting everything. I leaned forward. This isn't just about my land. Diane's been bullying people for years. Eleanor was fined for having a vegetable garden. Marcus had to remove the wheelchair ramp he built for his father. They need to be stopped. Sandra exhaled. All right, we'll prepare for the legal fight, but we won't file yet. Just don't wait too long. I had no intention of waiting. I had a trap to set. Over the next 3 days, I photographed every vehicle that entered my land, recorded every worker who cut my trees, and logged every hour of unauthorized construction. I didn't say a word. By Friday, they had bulldozed the clearing, laid out the foundation markers, and were preparing to pour cement footings. That evening, Eleanor knocked on my door, looking nervous. "Jack," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "They're lying to everyone. Diane told the HOA that you agreed to sell the land and are just causing trouble now." "That's a lie." "I know," she said, "but most people believe her. And Jack, it's not just a workshop." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Eleanor swallowed hard. "There's a factory involved. Some furniture business connected to Diane's brother. They're using HOA funds to build it. A factory? Now I had them. I smiled for the first time in days. "Good," I said. Eleanor frowned. "Good." "Let them build it," I said. "Every piece of machinery they install, every brick they lay, it's all evidence." I sat back. Diane Thompson thought she was stealing my land. She had no idea she was building her own destruction. The roar of a cement truck shattered the morning silence as I stepped onto my back porch, coffee in hand. Even after multiple warnings and a county stop work order, the HOA wasn't slowing down. If anything, they were accelerating. Diane had to know she was breaking the law. She didn't care. She was racing against the clock, desperate to establish enough of a structure so that tearing it down would be legally complicated. I stood at the edge of my property as workers rushed to pour the foundation. My phone's camera clicked steadily, capturing every violation. A sleek black SUV pulled up. Diane stepped out, sunglasses perched on her nose, her expression smug. "Mr. Mitchell," she called, walking toward me with mock concern. "I was worried when we didn't hear from you. Have you had a chance to review the paperwork?" "I have," I said, my voice pleasant. "It's been educational." Her smile twitched. "Then you understand this project is moving forward. The community voted." "Right. A unanimous decision, according to your minutes." "Exactly," she said, relief washing over her face. I took another sip of coffee. "Who's Thompson Custom Furniture?" Her mask cracked. Just for a second, I smiled. I noticed that name on some delivery slips. Diane's eyes flicked toward the workers, as if calculating how much I knew. "Just a community partner," she said carefully. "Interesting," I said, "because that community partner is your brother." She didn't respond. Instead, she spun on her heel and hurried toward the construction foreman, speaking in urgent whispers. I watched her panic spread, feeling the first real taste of victory. She thought I was powerless, but she had no idea the county commissioner was already reviewing their fraud. The trap was set. By 1:30 p.m., I was sitting in a packed county meeting room, my attorney Sandra at my side. At the front table, Diane and her husband, Tom, sat stiffly with their lawyer. Commissioner Davis, a no-nonsense woman with 30 years in local government, cleared her throat. "This emergency session addresses a disputed construction at 1423 Forest Lane," she announced. "I understand both property owners are present." I stood. Jack Mitchell, the actual property owner. Diane's attorney jumped in quickly. "If I may, Commissioner, the Maple Ridge HOA has documentation showing that land was designated for community use in the original development plan." Sandra slid a thick folder onto the commissioner's desk. "My client has the original deed, property surveys dating back 60 years, and tax records proving ownership of all 3 acres. The commissioner studied the documents. Her expression darkened. "These appear to be in order," she said. "Miss Thompson, your association's claim rests on an amendment filed just last month. Can you explain the timing?" Diane straightened, her voice smooth. "Of course. When reviewing historical records, we discovered the original developer's intention was for this woodland to be community space. We simply activated a dormant provision." "That's fascinating," I said, leaning forward, "because the original developer was my father, and no such provision exists." A murmur ran through the room. Sandra dropped the final blow. "We also have evidence that the amended plat map contains forged signatures and backdated approvals." The commissioner raised a hand sharply. "These are serious allegations. I will need to review all documentation thoroughly." She turned to Diane. "In the meantime, I'm issuing a stop work order, effective immediately." Diane leaped to her feet. "Commissioner, we've already invested over $50,000 in this project. The community workshop will provide a commercial factory for your brother's furniture business." I cut in smoothly. Silence. Diane's face drained of color. That's not relevant," she stammered. The commissioner wasn't buying it. She stacked the documents neatly and nodded. "The stop work order stands. I'm referring this matter to the county prosecutor for possible fraud charges." Diane and Tom stormed out of the room, their lawyer trailing behind them. They had lost. But I knew Diane wouldn't go down quietly. Outside, in the parking lot, Diane cornered me. "You have no idea what you've done," she hissed, her husband Tom hovering behind her. I shrugged. "Exposing fraud? This project means everything to us," she spat. "To you," I corrected, "not the community." Tom stepped closer, his tone lower. "We can make this worth your while, Mitchell. Name your price for the land." I smiled. "It's not for sale." Diane's expression hardened. "Then prepare for war." She stepped closer, voice venomous. "The HOA has resources you can't imagine. By the time we're done, you'll be drowning in legal fees and violations." I looked over her shoulder. A small group of neighbors stood watching, including Eleanor. Diane saw them too. She backed away, fuming. "This isn't over," she snapped. I smiled. "I'm counting on it." That night, my doorbell rang. A nervous young woman stood on my porch, clutching a folder. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Rachel Winters," she whispered. "I'm the HOA secretary." I gestured her inside. Once the door was shut, she blurted it out. "They're shredding documents. Right now." "What?" After the meeting, Diane and Tom went back to the HOA office and started destroying records, financial statements, voting records, meeting minutes, anything connected to the workshop project. I stared at her. "That's very interesting," I said. "But why tell me?" Her hands trembled. "Because they forged my signature on the amended plat map," she whispered. "I could go to jail." She placed a folder on my table, including bank records showing they've been using HOA funds to prop up Robert's failed businesses for years. My daughter Jen, standing in the kitchen doorway, stepped forward. "You realize this is criminal evidence," she said. Rachel nodded, miserable. "I know, but they can't know it came from me." I met Jen's wide eyes. This wasn't just property fraud anymore. This was full-scale corruption. And now we had proof. The Maple Ridge HOA announced their grand opening with all the pomp and arrogance of a company unveiling its latest billion-dollar project. Diane Thompson. Despite the ongoing legal battles, fraud investigations, and a county stop work order, was determined to show off her victory. Banners stretched across the HOA's email newsletters. Join us for the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the Maple Ridge Community Workshop. The invitation conveniently left out the part about how it was built on stolen land and funded by embezzled HOA money. I stood at the edge of the crowd as people gathered in front of the newly constructed building. A 30,000-square-foot warehouse, standing on my land like an unwanted parasite. Diane's voice boomed over a microphone as she stood on the small stage. "Welcome, neighbors, to our community's newest treasure." Applause rippled through the hesitant crowd. Her husband, Tom, stood behind her, nodding proudly. And next to him, Robert Thompson, Diane's brother, the true mastermind of this fraudulent operation. I moved through the gathering, recording everything on my phone. Diane spotted me. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed. "Ah, Mr. Mitchell," she said into the microphone, addressing me like I was a village idiot who had finally wandered in. "So glad you could join us, finally accepting progress?" I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. I held up my phone and snapped a picture of the expensive machinery inside. Amazing what HOA fees can bill these days. Diane's smile tightened. Behind her, a banner was draped over the main door. Thompson Custom Furniture, a community partnership. That was all I needed. I turned toward the crowd, raising my voice. "I thought this was a community workshop," I said. A few heads turned. Diane rushed to answer. "It is. Anyone in the community can use it." I held up a price sheet I'd picked up from the front desk. $75 per hour, I read, payable to Thompson Enterprises. Murmurs spread. An elderly woman, Mrs. Abernathy, stepped forward. "We voted for a community space, not a private business." Tom stepped in. "Plans evolve." I smirked. "Right. And so do financial crimes." I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Diane's own voice crackled over the speaker. "Maximize profits from the sucker timber. We need to move fast before anyone figures it out." A recording from one of her private board meetings. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Diane's face drained of color. Then Rachel, the HOA secretary, stepped forward. "I've given him everything," she announced. Tom lunged for her, grabbing her arm. "You backstabbing little..." A hand clamped down on his wrist. Marcus, a retired ex-Marine and one of my neighbors, yanked Tom back. "Touch her again," he growled, "and deal with me." I nodded toward the back of the crowd. The county inspector and 2 uniformed police officers stepped forward. "Perfect timing, officers," I said smoothly. "That man just attempted to assault a witness providing evidence of fraud." Diane's voice shook with fury. "This is private property. You can't bring police here." The county inspector flipped through his clipboard. "Actually," he said, "this land still belongs to Mr. Mitchell. So, technically, we're standing on his private property, not yours." Neighbors gasped. Mrs. Abernathy pointed at Diane. "You lied to us." Diane spun toward me, her face twisted in rage. "You think this is over?" she hissed. I smiled. "I know it's over." The police stepped in, handcuffing Tom first, then Robert, then Diane, and as they were led away, I knew the fight wasn't truly over yet. Over the next several weeks, the dominoes continued to fall. The county prosecutor filed multiple charges against Diane, Tom, and Robert, including fraud, embezzlement, forgery, illegal land seizure. And just when Diane thought it couldn't get worse, Tom turned on her. He cut a deal with the prosecutors, handing over years of HOA corruption records. Suddenly, the HOA's entire financial structure was under scrutiny. Unauthorized assessments, fake fines against homeowners, HOA dues used for personal vacations. It wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a full-scale takedown. And as the investigation expanded, Diane and Tom finally realized this wasn't just about losing their factory. They were going to prison. I should have seen it coming. Even from jail, Diane found a way to strike back. The night before the final hearing, an anonymous tip led me to the workshop. Inside, I found something chilling. Water dripped from the ceiling. Black mold was already creeping up the walls. The entire foundation was flooding. Diane had ordered drainage pipes to be redirected, ensuring the entire structure would rot from the inside. If she couldn't have it, neither could I. But I wasn't going to let Diane win. With the HOA dissolved, the community rallied together. We funded repairs. We filed an injunction to reclaim the building. And 2 months later, under bright blue skies, the new sign was unveiled. Maple Ridge Community Center. No HOA. No corruption. Just a true space for the people. At the final hearing, Diane and Tom were sentenced to 5 years in prison. The county official who helped them was fired and charged. The court ordered full restitution. Every penny stolen from the community had to be repaid. And best of all, I got my land back. Even better, I made sure it could never be taken again. I secured a conservation easement, legally protecting the woodland forever. Not even a future HOA could touch it. That evening, I stood on my back porch, watching the sunset through the trees Diane once tried to steal. The land was mine again. But the real victory wasn't just reclaiming my property. It was freeing the entire community from Diane's reign of terror. And the best part? She had built her own downfall with her own hands. Final words. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't just stopping your enemies. It's letting them build their own destruction, while you quietly prepare for a future they'll never be part of. The battle should have been over. Diane and Tom were in prison. The fraudulent HOA was dismantled. The community was finally free. But Diane wasn't done yet. The day after the final hearing, my attorney James called. His voice was tight, urgent. "Jack," he said, "we found something." I frowned. "Found what?" He hesitated. "A hidden clause, buried deep in the HOA's legal documents." I felt a chill. "Tell me." Before the HOA dissolved, Diane transferred ownership of the workshop land to a shell company. I froze. "Meaning?" "Meaning," James said grimly. "On paper, she still owns it, even from prison." My grip on the phone tightened. Diane had played her last card. She knew she was going down. So she had set up a way to keep me from taking the land back. I exhaled slowly, thinking, can we fight it? "Yes," James said, "but it's going to be ugly and expensive." I glanced at the community center, the building we had saved and restored. Diane had planned for her victory to last beyond her downfall, but she had made one fatal mistake. She underestimated me. I met with James the next morning. He spread out a stack of legal documents across my dining table. "See this?" He tapped a contract filed 2 years ago. That's when Diane set up the shell company. It's registered under her cousin's name, but all financial transactions lead back to her personal accounts. I smirked. "So she still controls it." "Exactly," James said, "and that's where she messed up. If she had fully signed over the land, we'd be stuck in court for years." "But," I prompted, "but since the money trail leads back to her, it's fraudulent conveyance." I leaned back. "That means we can undo it." James nodded. With enough pressure, Diane had thought she was untouchable, but she had left breadcrumbs, and I was about to follow them straight to her last mistake. We filed a lawsuit against Diane and her shell company. It was the last legal battle of this war. Her lawyers fought hard. Even from prison, she tried to stall, manipulate, and twist the law. But what she didn't count on was how much evidence we had. We presented bank records showing her payments to fake accounts, emails proving she controlled the shell company, fraudulent contracts signed under her alias. After 3 brutal months, the judge ruled in our favor. The land transfer was reversed. The community center officially became ours. Diane had lost everything, and this time there was no escape. The last time I saw Diane, it was in a local news report. Her sentence was extended after the fraud charges stuck. 5 years turned into 10. Her once powerful name became a joke. Tom had cut a deal and walked away with nothing. Robert had vanished into obscurity. And Diane? She was exactly where she belonged. With Diane gone for good, the community thrived. The new HOA, led by Eleanor, was transparent and fair. The community center flourished, used for local events, workshops, and everything Diane pretended it would be. And my land, legally protected forever. The trees Diane tried to steal still stood tall. The land she tried to erase remained untouched. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. One evening, as I stood on my back porch, my daughter Jen joined me. She gestured toward the community center lights, glowing in the distance. "Did you ever think this is how it would end?" she asked. I smiled. Diane thought she was stealing my land. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air. But in the end, she built exactly what this community needed. Jen laughed, and she never saw it coming. I took one last look at the trees, the land, the home we fought for. Then I turned back inside, finally ready to let it go, because the battle was over, and we had won. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't just defeating your enemies. It's letting them destroy themselves while you quietly build a future they'll never be part of. Diane built her own downfall, and I simply watched it happen.